The doctor moved fast. "Turn it back on. Now." His voice dropped, sharp, controlled, but urgent, in a way that cut through the room. There was a split second where no one moved. My dad didn't even look at him. "Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates." He just kept his eyes on the machine, like he was waiting, calculating something. Then, without raising his voice, he said, "She's stable enough. We're not authorizing extended support." Stable. I couldn't even pull in a full breath. The nurse stepped in anyway, hands shaking as she reached for the valve, but my dad blocked her with his arm. Not aggressively, just enough to stop her. Like he'd done this before. That's when the doctor made the call himself, pushing past him and turning the oxygen back on. The hiss came rushing back, flooding my lungs so fast it hurt. I gasped too hard, too desperate, my chest tightening as my body tried to catch up. Everything felt distant, warped, but I could still hear them. "Sir, you cannot interfere with medical equipment like that," the doctor said, low and firm. And my dad finally looked at him. Not angry, not panicked, annoyed. "The note that she refused it," he replied flatly. "I'm not signing off on another bill for something unnecessary." Unnecessary. I was still shaking, clutching the edge of the bed, trying to breathe like a normal person again. And that's when I realized something that felt worse than the oxygen cutting off. He wasn't scared of losing me. He was scared of something else. Because right after that, his phone buzzed, and the second he looked at the screen, his entire expression changed. Tight, focused, almost urgent. He turned away from the bed, already dialing someone back as he stepped toward the door. And just before he left, I heard him say, "Yeah, it almost got delayed." Delayed? I was still in the hospital bed, still hooked up to oxygen. So what exactly was supposed to happen that required me not to be? People think moments like that come with yelling, chaos, something obvious you can point to and say, "That's when everything broke." But this was quiet, controlled, like a decision that had already been made long before I ever heard it. By the time my breathing stabilized, my dad was gone from the room. No apology, no explanation, just gone. The nurse stayed close for a while, pretending to check my vitals more often than necessary. I could tell she was watching me like she was trying to decide if she should say something. "Are you okay?" she finally asked, her voice low. I nodded, even though it wasn't true. My chest still felt tight, but not from the illness anymore. "Did I refuse the oxygen?" I asked. She hesitated. Just for a second. "No," she said carefully. "You didn't. That was all I needed." A few hours later, the room had gone quiet again. Machines humming, lights dimmed. My body felt heavy, but my mind wouldn't slow down. I kept replaying his voice. "We're not paying for this. She's stable enough." It almost got delayed. Delayed what? That word didn't fit. Not with a hospital bill. Not with my condition. And then I remembered something else. 2 weeks earlier, sitting at the dining table at home, papers spread out in front of me. My dad standing across from me, tapping the pen impatiently against the wood. "Just sign it, Sarah. It's standard. Temporary authorization makes things easier if anything happens." I had skimmed it, too tired to argue, too used to trusting him when it came to handling things. "What is it exactly?" I asked back then. "Administrative. Insurance coordination. You want me dealing with the hospitals or not?" The way he said it made it sound like I was being difficult. So I signed. Now, lying in that hospital bed, that memory didn't sit right anymore. Because nothing about tonight felt like coordination. It felt like control. The door creaked open, pulling me out of the thought. My dad stepped back in like nothing had happened, jacket still perfectly straight, phone in hand, expression neutral. "You're awake," he said. Not relieved, not emotional, just noting it. "I heard what you said," I told him, my voice rough. He didn't even flinch. "Good," he replied, walking further into the room. "Then you understand we need to start being realistic about your care." Realistic. I stared at him, trying to find something, anything that looked like concern. Turning off my oxygen is realistic? I asked. He exhaled, like I was missing the point. Prolonging unnecessary treatment isn't. Unnecessary. There it was again. But I wasn't stable, I said. The doctor works for the hospital, he cut in. They profit from keeping you here. His tone was calm, reasonable even, like he'd already justified this in his head 100 times. Then his phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't step out. He just glanced at it, and for a split second, something slipped. Tension. Real, sharp tension. He turned slightly away from me, answering quickly. Yeah. Pause. No, it's handled, he said under his breath. She's still under. There's no issue. Still under? I felt my stomach drop. He ended the call almost immediately, slipping the phone back into his pocket like nothing happened. But I didn't miss it. Didn't miss the words. Didn't miss the urgency. You're discharging tomorrow, he said, as if that settled everything. We'll manage this at home. That's not what the doctor said. It's already arranged. Of course it was. Everything always was with him. But now, every piece of it felt wrong. Too fast, too controlled. Like he was trying to move me out of here before something could happen. Or before something could be noticed. I looked at him. Really looked, this time not as my dad. Not as the person I depended on. But as someone making decisions around me. About me, without me. And for the first time, a thought settled in that didn't go away. What if this wasn't about saving money? What if I was the thing in the way? He adjusted his sleeve, already turning toward the door again. Get some rest, he said. Like this was normal. Like I was safe. The door clicked shut behind him. And the second it did, I reached for my phone with shaking hands. Because if I stayed here and did nothing, I had a feeling whatever he meant by delayed wasn't going to stay delayed for long. It wasn't about the hospital bill. That thought wouldn't leave me, not when the room went quiet, not when the machine steadied, not even when I tried to close my eyes. Because bills don't make people panic like that. And my dad? He was panicking. Just quietly. I pushed myself up enough to reach the tray beside the bed, grabbing my phone. My hands were still unsteady, but I managed to unlock it and scroll through my messages. There was only one person I could think of who might understand what I didn't. Lena. We hadn't talked much since college, but I remembered exactly what she did now, legal assistant. Entry level, sure, but still closer to this kind of thing than I'd ever been. I snapped photos of the hospital wristband, the admission file sitting loosely clipped at the foot of my bed, and then paused. The nurse from earlier stepped back into the room, closing the door behind her more carefully this time. You shouldn't be sitting up, she said, but her voice wasn't firm. It was cautious. I need to ask you something, I said. She hesitated again, the same hesitation as before. Then she walked over, lowering her voice. Okay, I swallowed. Earlier, when he said I refused oxygen, that's not in my file, right? No, she said immediately. It's not. Can someone put it in there? Another pause. Only if it's signed, or if there's documentation to support it. Signed. My chest tightened again, but not from the lack of air this time. Can I see my file? I asked. She studied me for a second, like she was weighing something internally. Then, without another word, she reached down and unclipped the folder. I wasn't here, she murmured, handing it over. I flipped through it quickly at first. Vitals, notes, timestamps, until something caught my eye. Authorization forms. My name. My signature. But the dates, they didn't match. Some were from weeks ago. Some were from yesterday. My stomach dropped. I didn't sign these yesterday, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The nurse didn't respond. But she didn't look surprised either. That was enough. I took photos. Every page I could. My hands moving faster now, more focused. Then I sent everything to Lena with one message. Something's wrong. I think my dad is signing things for me. The reply didn't come right away. But when it did, it came fast. Sarah, where are you right now? I stared at the screen. Hospital. Why? The typing bubble appeared instantly, then disappeared. then came back again. Do not leave with him until we talk. A cold feeling settled deep in my chest. Too direct, too urgent. Before I could respond, my door opened again. My dad, right on time. "You're up," he said, glancing at the file still in my hands. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Not anger, not surprise. Calculation. He stepped forward, smoothly taking the folder from me and placing it back at the foot of the bed. "You don't need to worry about paperwork," he said. "That's what I'm here for." "I didn't sign those," I said, holding his gaze. A beat. Then he smiled thin, controlled. "You did. You just don't remember." The way he said it made it sound final, like the conversation was already over. But my phone buzzed again. Another message from Lena. "Those forms? If they're what I think they are, Sarah, your name is tied to asset transfers." My pulse spiked. Asset transfers? I looked up at my dad. He was watching me now. Closely. Too closely. "Who are you texting?" he asked. "No one." He didn't believe me. I could tell. He reached out slightly, like he was about to ask for the phone, but then stopped himself. Another calculation. Another decision. "You're being discharged in the morning," he said instead. "Everything's already arranged." There was no question in it. No room to argue. Just like earlier. Just like the oxygen. But this time, I didn't push back. I nodded. "Okay." That seemed to satisfy him. He relaxed just a fraction. "Good," he said. "That's the right decision." The right decision. He turned to leave again, already pulling his phone out as he stepped into the hallway. And just before the door fully closed, I heard him say, "Yeah, she's coming home tomorrow. We're clear." Clear. I looked down at my phone, at Lena's last message, still glowing on the screen. "If this is what I think it is, your condition might be part of the timing." Part of the timing. My grip tightened around the phone. Because suddenly, everything lined up in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. The oxygen. The signatures. The urgency. And that one word he kept using. Delayed. I opened a new message. My fingers steady now, despite everything. "If anything happens to me, release everything." I hit send, then leaned back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling as the oxygen hummed steadily beside me. Because tomorrow, I was leaving the hospital. And if I was right, that was exactly what he needed. By the time I left the hospital, I already knew one thing for sure. Whatever my dad was trying to manage, it couldn't survive scrutiny. The discharge felt rushed. Too rushed. The doctor barely made eye contact with me as he went over the instructions, like he already knew this wasn't how it was supposed to go. "She should remain on consistent oxygen support," he said, more firmly this time, glancing at my dad. "Minimal interruption." "We'll handle it," my dad replied smoothly. Handle it. Like everything else, the nurse from before avoided my eyes as she adjusted my portable tank. But just before she stepped away, she pressed something lightly into my hand. A folded slip of paper. I didn't open it until I was in the car. Security cameras cover ICU hallways and rooms. Records retained. I read it twice, then folded it back up, slower this time. He didn't just say times it. It was recorded. The ride home was quiet. My dad drove like nothing had happened, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally checking his phone at red lights. No small talk. No questions about how I felt. Just silence. But it wasn't empty. It was tense. Controlled. Like he was waiting for something to finalize. When we got home, everything felt staged. The house was spotless. Too spotless. Staff was minimal, just one housekeeper who kept her distance, barely speaking. And my room. My oxygen setup was there, but smaller. Limited. Not what the doctor recommended. "Temporary," my dad said when he noticed me looking. "Until we reassess." Reassess. Another word that didn't mean what it sounded like. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, feeling the faint resistance in my breathing already. He lingered in the doorway, watching. "You'll be fine here," he added. "You don't need all that hospital excess." I nodded again, still playing along. Okay. That seemed to ease him, just like before. He gave a short nod and walked away, already pulling his phone out again. The second I heard his office door close downstairs, I moved. Laptop, phone, documents. Everything Lena had sent back overnight was already waiting. I opened the files, my pulse steady, now not panicked anymore. Focused. Asset transfers. My name was everywhere. Not as the owner, but as a shield. If anything happened to him, if investigations started, liability shifted through structures that depended on times me. My identity, my legal standing. And then I saw it. A clause buried deep in one of the documents. Finalization contingent upon incapacitation or death of secondary signatory. My breath caught. Secondary signatory. Me. I leaned back slowly, the weight of it settling in. This wasn't about saving money. This wasn't even about control. This was timing. If I got worse, if something happened, everything locked into place. Protected. Untouchable. And suddenly, his voice in the hospital came back clearer than before. It almost got delayed. Not canceled. Delayed. Because I didn't die. A sharp knock at my door snapped me out of it. Before I could respond, it opened. My dad stepped in. Settling in? He asked casually. I closed the laptop halfway, not fully hiding it, but not offering it either. Yeah, I said, just trying to understand everything. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. That same calculation again. You don't need to worry about that, he said, stepping closer. It's handled. There it was again, handled. I took a slow breath through the mask, then looked straight at him. How much was I worth? The question landed heavier than I expected. He didn't answer right away, didn't deny it either. Instead, his expression hardened just slightly. You're not understanding the situation, he said. No, I replied quietly. I think I am. I reached over, picked up my phone, and hit play. His voice filled the room instantly. Turn it off, we're not paying for this. The oxygen machine, the nurse, the doctor, all of it. Recorded. For the first time, he reacted. Not guilt, not regret. Anger. You recorded that? He snapped. I held his gaze. You said I refused treatment, I replied. I wanted to be accurate. His jaw tightened. You have no idea what you're interfering with. Then explain it, I said. A beat of silence. Then he exhaled sharply, stepping back. You don't understand what's at stake here, he said, his voice lower now, controlled again. This isn't just about you. I almost laughed. It never was. I know, I said. That's the problem. Another silence. He looked at me differently now. Not like a daughter. Like a risk. And that confirmed everything. I set the phone down slowly. Don't worry, I added, my voice steady. You won't have to explain it to me. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? I met his eyes without hesitation. It means, I said, in 24 hours. I paused just long enough for it to land. You're going to be explaining it to everyone else. The room went completely still, and for the first time, he didn't look in control. The 4-hour timer had already started. Not when I said it, not when he heard it, but hours earlier, while I was still in that hospital bed, struggling to breathe, listening to him decide whether I was worth the cost. Everything had been set in motion before I ever left that room. Lena moved faster than I expected. By the time I was back in my house, she had already looped in someone above her, a senior attorney who didn't ignore what he was looking at. Forged or misrepresented signatures. Asset transfers tied to a potentially incapacitated party. Medical interference captured on audio. Individually, they were concerning. Together, they were explosive. I didn't send the evidence to my dad. I didn't threaten him again. I sent everything exactly where it would matter. Regulatory authorities, financial oversight, and one investigative contact Lena's firm trusted. Then I scheduled the release. Not immediate. Timed. 24 hours. That way, even if he tried to move things, hide things, shut things down, it would already be too late. The first crack showed up 12 hours in. I was sitting in my room, Oxygen steady now. Scrolling through my phone when I heard it. Raised voices downstairs. Not loud, not chaotic. Sharp, controlled panic. I stepped just close enough to the staircase to hear. "What do you mean, frozen?" My dad's voice snapped. Pause. "No, that's not possible. Those accounts are protected." Another pause. Longer this time. Then quieter. "Who flagged it?" I didn't need to hear the answer. I already knew. By hour 18, the calls didn't stop. His office door stayed closed, but his voice carried through the walls, short, clipped, no longer calm. Words slipped through in fragments. Investigation. Authorization. Liability exposure. Temporary hold. Temporary. Just like my oxygen, apparently. At hour 22, it went public. Not everything. Just enough. A report small at first, questioning irregular financial structures tied to his company. No names in the headline yet. But inside, his was there. And attached to it, family-linked authorization concerns. I watched it spread in real time. Messages. Mentions. Calls. The image he'd built controlled, respected, untouchable. Starting to fracture. He came into my room just after that. No knock this time. No calm expression. "What did you do?" he demanded. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Really looked this time. At the man who stood beside my hospital bed and chose a number over my breath. "You said it was handled," I replied quietly. "This isn't a game, Sarah," he snapped. "Do you understand what happens if this spirals?" "Yes," I said. "I do." My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Another development. Accounts officially frozen. Pending investigation. I turned the screen slightly so he could see it. For the first time, he didn't speak. By the 2-4 hour mark, he had lost control of everything. Financial access gone. Business partners distancing. Legal scrutiny locked in. And the recording? It didn't stay private. It didn't need to go viral to matter. It went exactly where it needed to people who could act on it. People who didn't care about his image. Only what he did. The investigation moved quickly after that. Medical interference. Coercion. Fraudulent structuring. Each piece connected back to the same pattern. Control, manipulation, and timing built around me. Not as a daughter. As a variably. I wasn't in that house much longer. Within days, I moved into a care facility, one where decisions required times consent. My name came off everything he had tied it to. Legally. Completely. For the first time in a long time. Nothing about my life was being handled by someone else. I saw one final update about him a week later. Stepping into a building. Lawyers on either side. No statements, no control. Just silence. That night, I sat by the window in my new room. Oxygen steady, air coming easily this time. My phone buzzed again. Another headline. Another update. I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to, because I already knew how it ended. He tried to take my breath to protect his world. So I took his world, just to breathe again.